All right, today we're diving into the brilliant, but also really tragic and incredibly short life of one of the great romantic poets, John Keats. So imagine you're walking through a cemetery in Rome and you come across this gravestone. It says, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." I mean, how haunting is that? It's mysterious, it's incredibly sad. It makes you think of a life that was just fleeting, like it left no real mark, just words on a stream that vanish in an instant. So you have to ask, right? Whose grave is this? And what could that possibly mean? Why would someone choose those words to be remembered by? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out today. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with that mysterious epitaph. Then we'll look at how he went from being a doctor to a poet. We'll dive into his miracle year. You won't believe what he accomplished. Then we'll get into his big ideas, the tragic end to his life and love story. And finally, we'll circle back and figure out what it all means. A legacy writ on water. All right, let's jump right in with that central puzzle. Okay, so the grave, it belongs to John Keats. But honestly, knowing that almost makes it more of a mystery, doesn't it? I mean, this is one of the most celebrated poets in the entire English language. So why on earth did he think his legacy would just disappear? To get that, we really have to understand his life. And his life, right from the start, was just full of loss and a really profound change of heart about what he wanted to do. Tragedy really did find Keats early and often. He was born in London, and by the time he was just 8 years old, his father died. Then, at only 14, his mother was gone too. So he did what you'd expect. He pursued a stable career, and he actually became a licensed surgeon. But poetry? That was his real passion. And in 1816, he made this incredibly brave choice to just walk away from medicine to chase his art. And that decision, wow. It led to one of the most incredible, explosive bursts of creative genius that literary history has ever seen. Just look at that year, 1819. Think about that. One single year. And it would go on to change English literature forever. Yeah, historians and critics have a name for it. His Annus Mirabilis, which is just Latin for miracle year. And it really was. During this one incredibly short time, while he was sick, while he was struggling with money, Keats created a body of work that would basically make him immortal. In that one year, he wrote what we now call his great Odes. And these aren't just any poems. They are absolute cornerstones of English literature. Poems you've probably heard of, like Ode on a Grecian Urn, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on Melancholy, and to Autumn. Yup, all of them came out of this one single miraculous year. So what was going on in his head? What were the big ideas driving this incredible poetry? Let's break down some of the core concepts that are so important, especially if you're studying his work. Okay, first up is this idea he called negative capability. Now, this might sound complicated, but it's really profound. Keats believed that a truly great mind could be comfortable with uncertainties, with mysteries, without, as he put it, an irritable reaching after fact and reason. And you can totally see how a guy who lost his parents so young would come up with a philosophy like this. It's all about embracing life's contradictions, the pain and the beauty, the joy and the sorrow, and just letting them exist together. Next up is his famous sensuousness. Keats' poetry isn't just something you read, it's something you experience. It's not just for your eyes, it's for all 5 senses. He won't just describe a piece of fruit, he'll make you feel how cool it is on your fingers, taste its sweetness, smell its fragrance. His imagery is just so vivid, it creates this complete sensory world for you. And then, of course, there's his most iconic line from Ode on a Grecian Urn: "Beauty is truth, truth beauty." For Keats, the highest form of beauty, whether in art or nature or just a human moment, that was the ultimate truth. He believed that if you could really appreciate beauty, you were tapping into the deepest truths about our existence. So this actually leads to a pretty common debate among scholars. Was Keats just an escapist? On one hand, you have critics who argue that he used all this beautiful imagery about nature and myths to just run away from the harsh realities of his own life. But on the other hand, a lot of people argue that he wasn't trying to escape reality at all. He was using his imagination to find a deeper, more profound truth inside of it. And that brings us to the final, really tragic chapter of his life. A chapter that was filled with as much suffering as his poetry was filled with beauty. His last few years were just this perfect storm of heartbreaks. He was deeply in love with a woman named Fanny Brawne, but he was too poor and too sick to ever marry her. And the sickness, it was tuberculosis, which back then was basically a death sentence. There was no cure. He traveled all the way to Rome, hoping the warmer weather might help, might save him, but it didn't. He died there in 1821. He was only 25 years old. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that lonely grave in Rome, and the mystery of those final words. So, here lies one whose name was written water. Keats himself asked for that epitaph. Why? Because he died believing his life was a failure. Think about it. He was young, he was poor, and his work hadn't gotten the praise it really deserved yet. He honestly, truly believed he would be completely forgotten. And the irony, it is just staggering, because his legacy, far from being washed away like words in water, is one of the most permanent, most enduring in all of literature. So I want to leave you with this thought. What he managed to do in just a few short, difficult years was, well, a miracle. And it makes you wonder, right? If Keats had lived to be 75 instead of 25, how might our world be different today? If the man who gave us the great odes when he was basically a kid had lived a full life, what other truths, what other beauty might he have shown us? What masterpieces did we lose? It's a question that really reminds you just how precious and how powerful his fleeting genius really was.